The 2026 season is less than 2 months away from starting, with some new regulation changes which will heavily affect the power units. Audi will make their own engines, Honda will move to supply Aston Martin, allowing Ford to make a major return to Formula 1, forming a partnership with Red Bull Powertrains to supply both Red Bull Racing and the Racing Bulls. This marks Ford's return to Formula 1 for the first time since supplying engines for Jordan all the way back in 2004. But what if Ford re-entered Formula 1 as their own constructor instead of just an engine supplier? Now to answer this, I loaded up F125, created a Ford racing team, signed both Jack Crawford and Nikola Solov, and simulated through the next 10 seasons of the sport. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe and consider becoming a channel member by clicking the join button below. The Alternate Universe 2025 season sees a different Constructors champion, as Ferrari outscored the real-life champions of McLaren by just over 50 points. Red Bull finished in third, just ahead of Mercedes, while the brand new Ford team finished dead last and failing to score any points. Both new drivers finished in P21 and P22, with Crawford gaining the upper hand over Formula 3 icon Nikola Solov. The real-life champion of Lando Norris can only secure a third place this time round, with the reigning champion of Max Verstappen only managing to finish as the runner-up. This allows for a brand new champion to be crowned, as the Ferrari driver of Charles Leclerc manages to take his first ever Drivers' Championship, narrowly beating Verstappen by just 2 points. Now, during a 16-race season, the champion Charles Leclerc managed to win on 6 occasions, while Verstappen would win on just 3. Lando Norris was able to win 4 races, while Russell won twice and Hamilton won just once. At the end of the first season, the longest F1 career comes to an end as Fernando Alonso is set to retire, with Carlos Sainz moving to Aston Martin to replace him. Lando Norris leaves McLaren in favour of the Williams team, while Gabriel Bortoleto jumps up to drive in Papaya. Jack Crawford will leave the Ford racing team, with Isaac Hadjar moving over to the new team, and the last open seats are at UKESIDE, which is given to Zane Maloney, while the Racing Bulls provide a debut to the young Paul Aaron. Now both the aerodynamics and powertrain departments are then hit with some regulation changes. The regulation changes caused a shake-up in the Constructors' Championship, with the reigning champions of Ferrari falling down to the runner-up spot, being overtaken by Red Bull Racing. Ford continued to struggle despite the new changes, with the team remaining in P11. Once again, their drivers finished in P21 and 22, with Nikola Solov beating his teammate this season. Last season's champion Charles Leclerc failed to retain his title, falling down to 3rd place, just ahead of his teammate of Lewis Hamilton. Williams had an incredible season to finish in 3rd place, largely due to Norris's performance which saw him finish as the runner-up. With both Leclerc and Norris failing to win the title, Max Verstappen will once again rise to the top of the standings to win yet another Drivers' Championship, this time by just under 60 points. He was very successful this season as he won a total of 7 races, while runner-up Lando Norris would win 4. 3rd place Leclerc actually failed to win any races, unlike George Russell and Alex Albon who won 2, while Carlos Sainz returned to the top while driving for Aston Martin. Another legendary driver, Sir Lewis Hamilton, is set to retire this season, with Oliver Bearman moving to the successful Ferrari team. Paul Aaron is leaving the Racing Bulls after just a single season and heading to Haas, as he is replaced by the debuting Victor Martins. Both Pierre Gasly and Nikola Solov lose their seats with nowhere to go, allowing Esteban Ocon to join Ford, while Haas and Alpine provide debuts for both Pepe Marti and Zach O'Sullivan. Now the powertrain department is then once again hit with some regulation changes. A 3rd season sees a 3rd different Constructors champion, after Williams take championship success for the first time in decades. Last season's champions Red Bull failed to run it up, but Ford still struggled to move up from P11, but managed to score their very first championship point. Their newest driver Esteban Ocon continued traditions of finishing last, while Isaac Hadjar moved up to P19, scoring the team's first point. Charles Leclerc fell out of the top 3 this season, being overtaken by race winner Alex Albon, who managed to take his Williams car to 3rd place. And once again, a 3rd season sees a 3rd different Drivers' champion, with the reigning champion Max Verstappen failing to secure another championship. Lando Norris will now eventually secure his first Drivers' Championship only 2 years later, while driving for a different team, this time in the form of Williams. Complete dominance from Lando resulted in a 135 point gap between the top 2, with Lando winning a total of 13 races. Runner-up Verstappen would only win twice, while Alex Albon added another race win to his career tally. Now the 3rd driver retiring from this simulation is the German Nico Hülkenberg, while the French driver Isaac Hadjar is dropped by the Ford racing team. Race winner Oscar Piastri moves over to Ford, with the McLaren team questionably signing Lance Stroll. Liam Lawson is then signed by UKESIDE, Zach O'Sullivan then moves over to the Racing Bulls, and Paul Aaron moves over to Alpine. Aston Martin bring back Pierre Gasly, while Jack Crawford makes a return to drive for Haas. Now one last swap between McLaren and the Sauber team sees Bortoleto head home, while Maloney heads to drive for McLaren. The aerodynamics department once again got hit with some regulation changes, this time paired with the chassis department. Williams are the first multiple-time Constructors champions in this simulation, as they absolutely blow everyone away to top the standings, scoring over double Aston Martin, who finished as runners-up. The Ford team finally made some major improvements which saw them jump up to P8, in contrast to McLaren, who dropped down to P10. Oscar Piastri was a major help with pulling the team up after he finished in P13, while Ocon also improved to finish P16. Ferrari driver Charles Leclerc managed to move back into the top 3 this season, taking 3rd place, but finished behind both Williams drivers, as Alex Albon moved up to the runner-up spot. But still, no one was able to stop Lando Norris, as he secured another World Drivers' Championship, absolutely wiping the floor with the entire grid. He scored 368 points compared to Albon's 227, which was shown in race wins after Lando won 14 times and Albon failed to do so. The other 2 race wins were secured by the Red Bull pairing. A smaller driver shake-up at the end of the 4th season, with Lando Norris leaving the sport after achieving his 2 titles. Kimi Antonelli jumps over to the champions of Williams, with Esteban Ocon moving to Mercedes, causing the newest Ford team to sign Liam Lawson away from Kick Sauber. This does leave the final seat available at Sauber, in which Richard Verschoor takes to make his debut in Formula 1. Now, the only regulation changes this year will hit the durability department. For a 3rd season in a row, Williams topped the Constructors' Championships once again, even after losing their world champion. The gap to 2nd place was drastically reduced to just 50 points to Ferrari, while the Ford team continued to rise up the standings to finish in P6. Their continued improvement saw Piastri move up to P12, while Liam Lawson improved on Ocon's result for P15. Last season's runner-up Alex Albon drops to P5 this season, with George Russell taking his Mercedes up to 3rd place. Kimi Antonelli was able to finish in 2nd place after moving over to the champions of Williams, but couldn't stop the returning champion. This year saw Charles Leclerc return to championship glory for the first time since season 1. A very strong season from Leclerc saw him take 7 race wins on the way to winning his title, while runner-up Antonelli would only win once. Both George Russell and Alex Albon were able to win 2 races each, with Verstappen winning a total of 4 different races. Carlos Sainz will be the latest driver to retire from Formula 1, with Gabriel Bortoleto replacing him at Aston Martin. Oliver Behrman is also set to leave the sport, with Alex Albon moving over to Ferrari, Pepe Martin moving to Williams, while Zach O'Sullivan is set to move to Haas. Isaac Hadjar and Callum Voisin will then be brought into the sport next season to drive for Kick Sauber and the Racing Bulls respectively. Heavy regulation changes will affect the aero, chassis and durability departments going into next season. For the 4th season in a row, the Williams team secured the Constructors' Championship, with Ferrari still firmly on their tail. Ford continued their rise to the potential top as they moved up to P4 by the end of the season, with both drivers finishing in the top 6, with Piastri just beating out his teammate Liam Lawson. George Russell managed to remain in 3rd place this season, just behind the former champion of Charles Leclerc, who missed out on the title by just 15 points. Now in the 6th season, we will see a 4th different drivers champion, as the young Italian Kimi Antonelli managed to take his Williams to the very top of Formula 1. Both of the top 2 drivers would finish the season with 5 race wins, with George Russell very close behind after he managed to win 4. Alongside the major improvements from Ford, Oscar Piastri managed to take the team's first ever Formula 1 race win and cement their place in history. The multiple-time champion Max Verstappen hasn't been near the top for a few seasons now, and has decided to retire to focus on other forms of racing. Franco Colapinto will be the one moving over to Red Bull, allowing Nicolas Solov to come back to Formula 1 to drive for Alpine. Alex Albon will also leave, much like Esteban Ocon, who are both suspected to have retired. The newest champion Kimi Antonelli moves over to Ferrari, with Williams poaching Liam Lawson from Ford. An open seat at Ford brings back former champion Lando Norris, with Oliver Behrman coming back into the sport to drive for Mercedes. Both the aerodynamics and chassis departments will see regulation changes once again. Williams have finally been stopped from winning another Constructors' Championship and are dethroned by Ferrari, as Williams actually dropped down to P5. Ford had an incredible season to move up to the runner-up spot, with Oscar Piastri remaining in P5, but Lando Norris returning with a bang and finished in 3rd place. He finished just behind both Ferrari drivers, with Charles Leclerc finishing in the runner-up spot, allowing Kimi Antonelli to once again win the championship, scoring over 280 points. This came as a result of 7 race wins, while Leclerc was only successful on just 2 occasions. Both George Russell and Zane Maloney also managed 2 race wins, while Norris, Piastri and Oliver Behrman all won just once. The next driver to leave Formula 1 will be Pierre Gasly, with an open seat left at Aston Martin, which is taken by Zach O'Sullivan, and Victor Martins moving over to Haas. McLaren and Ferrari swap drivers, which will see Leclerc drive in Papaya and Maloney set to drive in red. The last open seat is then given to Matteo Sagazetta, who will come in to drive for the Racing Bulls next season. While the chassis department is targeted once again, this time partnered with the powertrain department. The results of the Constructors' Championship remained almost exactly the same, with Ferrari winning the title just ahead of Ford and Mercedes. Now the only change would actually be towards the bottom, which saw UKESIDE and Haas swapping places. Last season's runner-up Charles Leclerc dropped down to 3rd place after moving to McLaren, with his replacement Maloney only managing P7. Ford driver Lando Norris continued to rise and will record the team's best finish after he managed to finish in 2nd place. Now for the 3rd season in a row, Kimi Antonelli could not be stopped. He kept his Ferrari at the very top of the standings to take another Drivers' Championship title. Antonelli continued to win 7 races across the whole season, while runner-up Lando Norris would only win once. 3rd place Charles Leclerc won 3 times, George Russell managed to win twice, while the remaining race wins were split between Piastri, Maloney and Pepe Marti, who would all win just a single race. Now despite winning his first race, Pepe Marti is then dropped by the Williams team, much like Yuki Tsunoda and Nikola Solov, who also lose their seats. Filling the Williams seat will be Paul Aron, with Victor Martins moving to the French team of Alpine. Zagazeta moves over to Haas, allowing Taylor Barnard to join the Racing Bulls. Former champion Charles Leclerc moves over to the open Red Bull seat, with Zach O'Sullivan moving to McLaren, and Pierre Gasly coming back and once again signing for Aston Martin. One of the last open seats at Alpine is given to Richard Verschoor, with UKESIDE bringing in Tim Tramnett to make his debut in Formula 1 next year. The chassis department is then once again hit with some regulation changes. Now the championship finally sees a huge shake-up at the end of the penultimate season, as the newest Ford team rose to the top of the sport to win their first Constructors' title. Ferrari fell to runners-up after Maloney finished all the way down in P11. Both Ford drivers would make it into the top 3, with former champion Lando Norris finishing in 3rd place behind his teammate. The title is then between the reigning champion Antonelli and the other Ford driver of Oscar Piastri, with the Aussie just missing out on his first world title. Antonelli would then secure another championship, increasing the gap between him and the runner-up. He would also improve on his overall performance, as he won a total of 9 races this season, up from 7 in previous years. 3rd and 4th of Norris and Leclerc would both win 2 races, while Piastri, George Russell and Liam Lawson all took a single race win each. There was only one driver who will not make it to the final season, as McLaren dropped Lance Stroll in favour of bringing George Russell to fight for the final title. Gabriel Bortoleto moves into the open Mercedes, Zach O'Sullivan moves to Aston Martin, allowing Callum Voisin to join Russell at McLaren. The top 2 teams are Ford and Ferrari swap drivers, with Kimi Antonelli and Lando Norris swapping seats for season 10. The last open seat at the Racing Bulls allows for Ritomo Miata to come in and debut in the final season. Some small regulation changes which will affect both the powertrain and durability departments. Now the simulation ends on a high, with the newest Ford team continuing their success to secure the Constructors' Championship in the final season. Last season's runners-up Ferrari dropped all the way down to P5, with Mercedes rising to finish in P2. Both Ford drivers remained in the top 3, this time actually occupying the top 2. The Red Bull driver Charles Leclerc will be known as the best of the rest, as he managed to take the 3rd place spot just ahead of the new McLaren driver George Russell. The Drivers' Championship was then dominated by Ford. It was once again Oscar Piastri playing second fiddle to his teammate and only managed to finish as the runner-up. And that means for the 5th season in a row, Andrea Kimi Antonelli finished at the top of the standings to win another championship title. Kimi reverted to winning 7 races this season, with Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris and Liam Lawson all being successful twice each. Both Mercedes drivers, alongside George Russell, stood on the top step of the podium just once across the final season. And that is 10 seasons simulated with the addition of the Ford racing team. But who was the GOAT of the simulation, and who should have been really taking notes? Starting with the Constructors' Championship, in which 4 different teams were able to taste success. Red Bull Racing won a single title all the way back in Season 2, while Ford would top the standings in the final 2. The Scuderia Ferrari managed 3 titles, while the shock Williams team rose to the very top of the sport a whopping 4 times. There would also be 4 different drivers' champions, with Max Verstappen being the only driver to only take 1 title. Both Lando Norris and Charles Leclerc managed to win the title twice, but no one can match the complete dominance Kimi Antonelli had after winning the title 5 times in a row to end the decade. A total of 15 different drivers stood on the top step, with a lot of new winners, including Tsunoda, Pepe Marti and Bortoleto, who won just once, just like Sir Lewis Hamilton and Carlos Sainz. Oliver Behrman was the only driver to win twice, while Maloney and Lawson won a trio of races each. Albon won 5, Piastri won 6, before jumping up to George Russell, who managed 16 race wins. Verstappen managed 18 race wins, with Leclerc winning 25, Kimi Antonelli managed 36, but somehow didn't top these standings, as Lando Norris entered the simulation with the most race wins after he won 41 times. And that's going to wrap up another video on F1 25. Make sure you drop a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. There'll be links in the description to the Ford Racing mod, as well as my various social media platforms, including my Discord server. But that is going to be all from me today, so I hope you have a good day, evening or night, wherever you are, and goodbye.